Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku became a vampire part 1. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 2, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content. And leave a like and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story BearfootTruck from fan fiction. So let's start the video. It was a cold, cloudy fall night in New York City. But that didn't put a damper on the hustle and bustle of the crowds. In fact, they were more than eager to enjoy the nightlife, hitting up the bevy of night spots that the Big Apple had to offer. Ian's Bar and Grill was no less jumpin' than any others. In operation since the early 1930s, Ian's was known for giving out free hot dogs with every purchase. Thus far, people were eating and drinking as merrily as they could be, not caring what tomorrow brought so long as they were having fun today. However, that was all about to change. As he sat in the corner, sipping a 𝗧𝗵𝗲, Joe Dexter was about to undergo a most terrifying transformation, though his waif-like frame and pale skin wouldn't have easily given that away. With the moon shining brightly on his glass, he groaned and screamed as his muscles bulked up. He grew hair all over his body and, most importantly, he grew more caniform features. In short, Joe Dexter had become a werewolf, and the patrons of Ian's took notice almost immediately. What the hell? Oh my god, he's a werewolf. Run for your lives. Anarchy in NYC. Patrons and employees alike scrambled to leave the bar and hopefully not become werewolf food on the way out. Though some attempted to hide in the bathrooms, hoping to ride out the storm until Dexter changed back into a human, and some attempted to defend against him with their quirks. However, those that chose to flee the bar mainly ganged up on the front door, not only slowing down the evacuation, but also allowing ample time for Dexter to get a few kills, starting with a hapless young lady who got her spinal cord ripped out through her skin. Similarly, the people with quirks didn't have powerful enough quirks to take him down and were also sliced to bits. Some people had called the police to report the incident, but that was largely unnecessary, for one of the NYPD's famous blue and white RMPs was in the vicinity when people were escaping the bedlam. Immediately, Officer Ben Brankovic flipped on the cruiser's lights, and him and Officer Luca Vinci hopped out with their service pistols drawn, Vinci also grabbing the radio mic. "North David to Central," said Vinci, a black-haired officer of average height and build. "North David K," said the dispatcher. "Central, we got a bunch of people fleeing Ian's Bar and Grill, address 627 9th Ave. Oh shit. Central, we got a werewolf down here. Get the ghoul unit immediately. 10-4. North Squad 11, 1013U. North David reports at 10:35 W. Address 627 9th Ave. 10-4. Central. Brankovic and Vinci used their car as cover, and Vinci grabbed the 𝗧𝗏𝗃 37 shotgun from the dashboard for extra firepower. However, shooting Dexter not only had no effect, but also got him even angrier and caused him to go after the two 𝗲𝗲s. "Oh shit," exclaimed Brankovic, a fat redhead. "Luca, get in." Brankovic and Vinci scrambled to get in the RMP, hoping that it would offer additional protection from Dexter. However, Dexter simply smashed through one of the windows and took some swipes at Brankovic, who was out of arm's reach. For now, him and Vinci fired a few more shots at Dexter, hoping to deter the werewolf from further attacks. The two officers prayed that North Squad 11 would get there soon before they were added to the growing list of officers whose watch ended too soon. Just when all seemed lost, a Matador red 1972 Oldsmobile 98 Regency sedan with a red fireball light atop a white vinyl roof pulled up. Out of the car stepped Detective 2nd Grade Shoto Todoroki of the Supernatural Crimes Unit, dressed in a Judas Priest British steel t-shirt, olive green M65 field jacket, blue jeans and black leather McNamara combat boots. He didn't look much like an NYPD detective, but appearances were deceiving. He drew a Smith & Wesson Model 29 from under his jacket, and with careful aim, he fired a shot right through Dexter's head, thereby stopping the werewolf's rampage and saving Brankovic and Vinci's lives. Todoroki hurried over to their police car. "How are you two doing?" asked Todoroki. "Have either of you been injured?" Brankovic shook his head. "No, I'm fine. But man, another few seconds and that asshole would have had us." "Yeah, we owe you one, Two-Face," said Vinci. Todoroki nodded. He holstered his revolver, went back to his Oldsmobile and grabbed the mic for his car's police radio. "North Squad 11 to Central," said Todoroki. "North Squad 11 Kelvin. Central, I have multiple casualties down here. You'd better get a meat wagon immediately. 10-4. Having radioed in, Todoroki walked over to whatever was left of the bar and took a look at the carnage. No matter how many vampires, werewolves, zombies, or other supernatural suspects he eliminated, he never got used to the sight of their victims. There were a couple of survivors amongst the corpses, desperately trying to claw their way to safety, unable to let their suffering prolong. Todoroki drew an 𝐒𝐬𝐳 that was attached to a 𝗧𝗵𝗲 rig beneath his jacket and ended their lives with a single shot each. 𝗵𝘃𝗁 and 𝗵𝘲, having recovered from their shock just enough to exit their vehicle, took notice. "Jesus, man," said 𝗵𝘲. "Those were innocent civilians I shot. Had I allowed them to live, they too would have become werewolves," said Todoroki. "I couldn't allow them to suffer like that." 𝗵𝘃𝗁 and 𝗵𝘲 looked at each other. As much as they were willing to go along with whatever the NYPD had to offer, they would never be able to wrap their heads around how the Supernatural Crimes Unit, aka the Ghoul Unit, operated. The next afternoon, in his Hell's Kitchen apartment, Todoroki awoke to the sound of 𝗵𝘃𝗄 by Anvil, which was coming from a realistic Chronoset 247 cassette alarm clock. After hitting the snooze button, he got up, went into the kitchen, dining room and poured himself a bowl of Honey Nut Cheerios, which he added oat milk to. While he didn't mind waking up to go to work, Todoroki found that having something as simple as a bowl of cereal and some sort of caffeinated drink definitely extinguished whatever feelings of dread lingered from waking up. As for caffeine, he grabbed a can of Mountain Dew Pitch Black from the fridge and shotgunned it. While the carbonation and the chill would have prevented many people from accomplishing such a feat, Todoroki was no ordinary human. Then again, considering a number of people on this planet had a quirk of some sort, such a thing as an ordinary human was in short supply at best. After brushing his teeth, flossing and combing his hair, Todoroki returned to his bedroom, took off his nightshirt and did 100 push-ups. He then lied down on a weight training bench with a barbell suspended over it. He then proceeded to bench press 200 kilograms of Olympic-grade plates. After doing 25 bench presses, he got dressed for the day, which today included a bulletproof vest under a UFO Forset t-shirt in addition to a vintage Timex wristwatch, a studded leather wristband, his jeans, boots and jacket, plus the holster for his Model 29 and the 𝗧𝗵𝗲 rig for his 𝐒𝐬𝐳. Then, he hopped into his Oldsmobile and drove to the Midtown North Precinct, which was a couple of blocks away from his apartment. Sure, it would be easier to walk in this city, but in spite of New York traffic, he valued the independence that driving gave him. Besides, in his line of work, driving was rather essential. Soon enough, Todoroki reached the Midtown North house, finished in 1939 as part of a WPA project. The Midtown North Precinct building was a gray concrete structure with minimal decoration. After getting out of his car, he headed on in. Like all NYPD officers and detectives, Todoroki worked 5 days followed by 2 days off, then 5 days followed by 3 days off, rotating between the 12 to 8, 8 to 4 and 4 to 12 shifts every 5 tours. Tonight, he was doing the 4 to 12, and being the sole member of the Supernatural Crimes Unit, he was largely given exemptions for the 8 to 4, though there was the occasional daywalker to worry about. And zombie outbreaks could happen at any time of day. All that aside, Todoroki walked into the station and was greeted by Sergeant Rico Herrero, one of the desk sergeants. "Good afternoon, Todoroki," said Herrero. Todoroki nodded. "Good afternoon, Sergeant Herrero." Todoroki walked upstairs and into the squad room, where a few other detectives had already arrived and were waiting for the daily roll call and briefing to get out of the way. This squad room had a rather old-school feel about it, with ink blotters and slide projectors still being used. "Todoroki, what's happening, brother?" Detective First Grade Eddie Bennett, an older black guy who served as Todoroki's best friend and mentor in the NYPD, motioned for Todoroki to come over, so Todoroki sat down next to him and gave him some dap. "Good afternoon, Bennett," said Todoroki. "Not much has happened since we last met." "Still don't get out much," said Bennett. "Why should I? I have plenty to amuse myself at home." "Yeah, sure. I bought a couple of Jets tickets for me and my family this Sunday, but my wife canceled on me, so I'm figuring you and I could catch the game." "Hey Eddie, why bother?" said Detective First Grade Walter 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, a middle-aged brown-haired guy with a scar on his right cheek. "The Jets fucking suck this year." "Yeah, they ain't made the playoffs since 2010, said Detective First Grade Michael Ryan, a tall, brown-haired guy. "Ryan has a point," said Todoroki. "Besides, I'm more of a 49ers fan." "Hey, the Jets are playing the Niners this weekend," said Bennett. "I'll think about it." "Well, looks like Two-Face is gonna have a real snooze this weekend," said 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. Two-Face. Todoroki thought about that nickname and how it had stuck with him ever since he'd joined the NYPD, mainly because of the scar over his left eye. On one hand, he saw it as a form of derision from his fellow officers, often in the guise of jocularity, and also a reminder of how he could never escape his dark past. On the other hand, he relished the fact that it made him look more fearsome and gave ordinary street criminals and supervillains alike a sign that they were probably better off picking on another officer. "Hey, Todoroki," said Bennett. Todoroki failed to respond, entrenched in thought. "Yo," Bennett snapped his fingers in front of Todoroki's face, not earning a reaction. "Yo, wake up, man." Bennett shook Todoroki's shoulder this time, which finally got him to react. "You okay, Todoroki?" Todoroki nodded softly. "I'm all right." "Okay, just checking." Say, you find yourself a woman yet? Todoroki crossed his arms. Why should I? I have no use for romance. You know, I used to be just like that till I met Julie. The more I went out with her, the more I saw her as somebody I wanted to spend the rest of my life and raise a family with. I'm sure you'll find somebody like that someday. Personally, I doubt your assessment is true in my case, but I have better things to argue. Hey, think about it, my man. Just then, Captain Theodore Fraser, an old, balding guy in a gray suit who commanded the detective bureau for the Midtown North Precinct, showed up to do roll call and to make sure that all the detectives in his squad had their personal appearance and equipment in order and were wearing their bulletproof vests. Satisfied that all the detectives in his squad were present and squared away, Fraser proceeded to get on with the shift briefing. Okay, everybody, you all know about the Midtown East Crossbow killer. We still don't have a definitive identity on the killer, but Detective 3rd Grade Musante found an important clue. The killer always plants a card with the name of a random bluegrass song on the victim's bodies. We're currently tracking any purchases from any record stores in the city that deal in bluegrass music. It might take us some time, but a lot of good arrests involve careful detective work. Moving on, Officer Candy found a bunch of hacked-up body parts in a garbage can in the theater district. Only a couple of the victims have been identified, but we're still working on getting a proper ID on the rest of them. I'd like to thank Detective 2nd Grade 𝗵𝗃𝗄 for identifying the ones we got identified so far. Oh, here's one for you. Todoroki, recently, a vampire known only as the binge drinker moved into the city. We're calling him that because they've been drinking more people's blood than usual. We don't have any clues on their identity, so check all the usual vampire hangouts for clues. Also, good work on stopping the werewolf attack at Ian's yesterday. I wish you wouldn't have to shoot the surviving victims. But if there's no other cure for werewolf disease, I'll tolerate it for now. Lastly, we got a new form of cocaine hitting the streets that's been mixed with carfentanil. 150 people have already died from this junk. And we still don't know who's bringing it into the city, so Evans, work whatever sources you can and try to get to the upper-level dealers. That's all for now, folks. Any questions? None of the detectives had any questions, okay? Good. Get out there, and let's be careful out on the streets. After taking care of some important paperwork, which constituted a good portion of his job as a detective, Todoroki grabbed his handheld radio and headed out to look for a place to start his investigation. In doing so, he found himself reflecting on the state of the city. In the 70 seconds and 80 seconds, even for a certain portion of the 90 seconds, the Big Apple was one of the most rotten places on Earth, with high crime, high rates of arson in the FDNY's war years, high rates of prostitution and porn theaters in Times Square, and even a financial bailout in 1975 after then-President Gerald Ford had initially told the city to drop dead. Not to mention the crack epidemic of the 80 seconds. Ostensibly, the city had greatly cleaned up its act since then, but as a cop, Todoroki knew that things weren't always as they seemed. For example, he knew that 7 of the 10 zombie outbreaks that had occurred in the US in the past decade had taken place in NYC, 4 in Manhattan alone. Vampire attacks had also seen an increase in the past decade as well. He hoped that the commissioner of the NYPD would come to his senses and hire more detectives for the Supernatural Crimes Unit. After all, Todoroki simply couldn't be in every borough at once. Then, while reflecting on the state of the city, a bar on West 50th Street caught Todoroki's eye. It was a quaint little joint called Mona's Pub. He could tell by the ink symbol scrawled next to the door that this was a vampire bar. Without question, he pulled into the next available parking spot, got out and headed into the bar. It was quite cramped, with wooden tables, seats, and stools. For background music, the sound system was blasting Hell on Wheels by Killer. There were plenty of vampires here, but Todoroki still took a seat at the bar, not particularly caring what they thought. Almost immediately, people took notice of him. "Hey there, hot stuff," said a female vampire with mid-length red hair. "What's a boy like you doing in a place like this?" asked another female vampire with neon blue hair and a flipped bob. Even one of the bartenders, a petite blonde, took notice. "So, what can I get for you?" Bloody Mary. People within earshot laughed at Todoroki, who tried his best to maintain his ice-cold demeanor. "No," said Todoroki. "I'm looking for someone." "Hey, there are plenty of someones here," said the bartender. "I'm looking for someone specific, the binge drinker." The bartender shrugged. "Never heard of him." "Neither have I," said the blue-haired vampire. "Yeah, so why don't you just make like a banana and split?" said the redhead. Todoroki glared at the redhead. "Don't get smart with me, woman. As beautiful as I think you are, I've got no pro." Before Todoroki could finish his sentence, somebody covered his mouth and dragged him out of his stool. He could feel the cold metal of a knife being pressed against his throat, and then heard evil giggling. "I cut you," said a bald black vampire. "Yes, I cut you." Todoroki raised his right hand somewhat, feigning capitulation. However, at the same time, he'd also raised his left hand towards the attacker's knife hand, and in one swift motion, he grabbed the wrist of the opponent's knife hand, pulled it down towards his chest and pinned it there, simultaneously raising his right arm further so as to block any sideways slashes from the attacker. Todoroki then pivoted to the left, behind the vampire, and continued until his right arm was atop his opponent's upper arm. In completing his turn, he pulled his right hand down his attacker's arm to the elbow, keeping that elbow bent, and releasing the guy's left wrist, he pushed the guy's arm up his back, keeping his own palm up. Then, Todoroki struck his opponent with a powerful right hook, and finally finished by kicking him to the ground, thereby causing him to drop his knife. Seeing this, the other vampires ganged up on Todoroki. "I'm warning all of you right now that I'm armed with a Smith & Wesson 44 Magnum and an Uzi 9mm. Attempt to mess with me, and I'll have no problems gunning all of you down." The other vampires ignored Todoroki's warning and attempted to close in on him. Knowing there was no way out, Todoroki drew his Uzi and proceeded to mow down a bunch of them. What made this challenging was that one vampire had a quirk that could implant a loud sound inside his head. Not helping were the various other quirks he had to dodge, though creating ice shields helped somewhat. Nevertheless, he gritted his teeth and stayed alive long enough to gun the sound-creating vampire down. Hearing the shots from within the bar, outside bystanders either attempted to run for it or call the police, not knowing that Todoroki himself was a cop. Finally, after a good portion of the bar had been peppered with bullet holes, blood and ice, Todoroki checked for any survivors behind the bar, of which there was one, the blonde bartender. Trembling, she attempted to reach for a Smith & Wesson Model 65 that she'd dropped in the ruckus, but he pointed his Uzi at her. "I know what you're thinking," said Todoroki. "Did I fire 32 shots or only 31? Well, to tell you the truth, in all this excitement, I never bothered to keep track. But considering this Uzi submachine gun fires 9mm ammo at a rate of 600 rounds per minute, I'd ask yourself, do I feel lucky? Well, do you? Harlot. Please just end me." Todoroki attempted to comply, but pulling the trigger of his Uzi did nothing because it was out of ammo. "Congratulations," said Todoroki. "I'm not gonna fill you full of holes." The bartender breathed a sigh of relief, and Todoroki lowered his Uzi. "I am, however, gonna blast you anyways." The bartender attempted to reach for her Model 65. However, Todoroki was quicker with his Model 29, thereby cleaning the bar of vampires. With another vampire hangout taken care of, Todoroki headed for the door, but before reaching it, he turned around and set the bar on fire with the hot portion of his quirk. "Burn in hell, motherfuckers." Todoroki then casually walked out of Mona's, parting the crowd as if they were the Red Sea. "Nothing to see here, ladies and gentlemen," said Todoroki. "Go on about your business." Upon reaching his Oldsmobile, Todoroki radioed into Central Dispatch, North Squad 11 to Central. "North Squad 11 Kelvin. Central, there's a fire at 401 West 50th Street. Get the FDNY down here. 10 minutes 4. Todoroki was all set to check out some more vampire hangouts when he got a call ordering him to come back to the Midtown North Station. He wasn't 100% sure, but he was betting that Deputy Inspector Roger Malcolm wanted to see him regarding his handling of the situation at Mona's. Ever since Todoroki had joined the NYPD, Malcolm had wanted a piece of his ass at one time or another because of the way he did things, and yet the Deputy Inspector could never seem to get rid of him. Todoroki mused that deep down inside, Malcolm actually valued how his brutal methods got results and bet that Malcolm would let him off the hook yet again. With that, he bravely entered Malcolm's office, where Malcolm, a tall black man with short hair and a mustache, who made Todoroki look like a shrimp, awaited him. After Todoroki had closed the door, Malcolm pounded on his mahogany office desk and sat up quickly. "Damn it, Todoroki, this is the 10th time I've called you down to my office this month. Don't be getting on my nerves with that cowboy bullshit." Todoroki crossed his arms. "Sir, those vampires attacked first. My retaliation was justified." Malcolm thrust his index finger at Todoroki. "I don't give a shit who attacked first. There ain't nothing in the patrol guide that allows you to torch people's businesses. And don't even get me started on that fucking arsenal you're carrying around. My arsenal is within regulations, sir. I fail to see how anything I did doesn't count as doing my job. Go ahead, keep back-to-kin me, kid. 𝗵𝗃𝗲𝗄𝐿𝐾𝐼 me. I don't give two shits that your daddy used to be the mayor. You keep destroying city blocks by doing your job, and I'm gonna make sure that you ain't even gonna be able to write traffic tickets until your fucking great-grandchildren are dead. Do I make myself clear, detective?" Todoroki nodded. "I hear you, but if you're that dissatisfied with the way I enforce the law, then go ahead and fire me. It's what you want, isn't it?" Todoroki and Malcolm engaged in an Ironside-esque stare-down. Neither side was willing to back down lest they looked weak. Ultimately, Malcolm sighed. "As much as I want to get rid of you, I can't," said Malcolm. "You're the best guy I got in the ghoul unit. Hell. You're the only guy. Ever since this unit was started, This city's seen a drop in vampire attacks, werewolf attacks, zombie attacks, and a bunch of other shit from all kinds of mean, nasty creatures. We don't get a lot of mayor's sons in here, but it's nice to know that I got that sort of connection. Todoroki nodded. I understand. Listen, take a vacation. You worked long enough, so think about it. I'll think about it. Right, I held you long enough. Get your ass out of here and do your job. But don't let me see you in this office unless you got something good for me, okay? Yes, sir. Dismissed. Todoroki and Malcolm saluted each other, and the former turned around and left. Once the white and red-haired detective was out of sight, Malcolm shook his head. "Shit," said Malcolm. "I'd hack my left arm off to know what's going through that boy's head." After his little chew-out session with Malcolm, Todoroki proceeded to scour New York for the binge drinker. But it wasn't easy. "Excuse me, I'm looking for someone," said Todoroki. "Not here, you're not." Todoroki whipped out his Model 29. "Try me again, asshole." Some time later. "Hi, I'm looking for the binge drinker." "The who?" Todoroki punched this vampire in the stomach. "Maybe that will jog your memory." Soon after that, "I need information on somebody." "No you don't." Todoroki grabbed another vampire's arm and bent it in an unnatural way. "Yes, I do." A little later on. "Hi there, you wouldn't happen to have information on somebody called the binge drinker?" "No, I wouldn't." Todoroki pulled out his Model 29 and Uzi. "Then get out of my face and stop wasting my time." Shortly thereafter, "I need some information." "Everybody needs something. Now beat it." "Okay." Todoroki broke a different vampire's nose. A little while after, "I'm looking for someone called the binge drinker." "You're looking for trouble. And you're looking for some broken bones." Todoroki pistol whipped this vampire. Soon, the binge drinker. "Talk." "I ain't talking." Todoroki jammed the barrel of his Model 29 down yet another vampire's throat. "Then maybe you're dying instead." "Afterwards, I'm trying to find somebody." "Then sign up for OkCupid." "Sign up for this." Todoroki need another vampire in the groin. Moving on. "Give me a name and an address for the binge drinker." "No fucking way, pig." Todoroki twisted an umpteenth vampire's head until his neck was close to breaking. "Then, I'll kill you." After walking out of a vampire bar called Curly's, Todoroki sighed and thought about how he didn't get anything on this shift. He recognized that detective work was often tedious and time-consuming, but he figured that someone with his detective skills should have at least found one lead by now. Not knowing what else to do, he decided to go back to his car, but in his state of pensiveness, he accidentally bumped into someone. "Oh, excuse me," said Todoroki. "It's okay." Todoroki looked over to see who'd bumped into him. A young Asian woman about an inch shorter than him with her pale green hair and a textured bob style. Owing to her black pea coat, he wasn't entirely sure of her figure, but she didn't appear to be as thin as a rail from what he could see. A woman's figure didn't matter much to Todoroki, however, her attitude was what he looked for. "Hey, what's your name, handsome?" asked the woman. "I'm Shoto Todoroki." "Nice to meet you, Shoto. I'm Mitsuko Hamasaki." "Charmed to meet you too." Todoroki shook hands with Hamasaki. "So I know we just met, but I'm pretty new here, and I think you're really cute." Hamasaki smiled. "Wanna go out tomorrow?" "I'd love to, but I work until 11:35 p.m. tomorrow. Fortunately, I know an all-night cafe called the Jolly Goat on West 47th that's really good if you're interested." "Oh, heck yeah. Let me give you my number." Hamasaki whipped out a pen and a notepad, which she scribbled her name and number on. Todoroki then wrote down his name and number on a sticky note and exchanged his for hers. "Listen, Miss Hamasaki, I must get back to work now, but I'll call you after I get out of work tomorrow. You stay safe, you understand?" Hamasaki gave a thumbs up. "You got it, boy." After a fruitless night of detective work, Todoroki clocked out and headed back to his apartment. As he lay in bed, he couldn't help but wonder about two things, the binge drinker and Hamasaki. At one point, he wondered if the two were one and the same, but he pushed the thought out of his mind and tried his best to sleep. The next day, things were going quite normally for Todoroki as he entered the squad room. "Hey Todoroki, you make any progress on the binge drinker?" asked Bennett. Todoroki shook his head. "Unfortunately no, but I did make progress on something else." "What's up?" "I have a date after work." "Nice going, brother." Bennett and Todoroki high-fived each other. "Tell me about her," said Bennett. "Her name is Mitsuko," said Todoroki. "I don't know too much about her other than that she moved here recently. Sounds like a good opportunity to show her around. I might just do that on my next day off. Besides, I might run into the binge drinker in the process. Hey, you never know." Before going out to scope for the binge drinker, Todoroki spent some time filling out paperwork. Given his penchant for wanton violence, he was no stranger to such a thing. He wondered when it would ever end, but on the other hand, he supposed it was a price to pay for keeping the city safe from whatever supernatural horrors befell it. After filling out an appreciable amount of paperwork, Todoroki went out to look for the binge drinker and again had no luck in finding anything. As a matter of fact, one vampire attempted to slice his throat upon hearing the words binge drinker, which led to him blowing said vampire's head off with his Model 29. The only consolation he had throughout this whole ordeal was that he was going to see 𝗵𝗃𝗃 tonight. After surviving this rough and tumble shift in calling 𝗵𝗃𝗃, Todoroki headed straight to the Jolly Goat Coffee Bar, located on West 47th Street. It was decorated with a brick wall on one side and a wooden wall on another. He walked up to the counter. "Hi, welcome to the Jolly Goat," said the barista, a petite blonde. "What can I get for you?" "I'll have a 12-ounce coffee, black," replied Todoroki. "Okay." The cashier punched in Todoroki's order. "Anything else?" "Excuse me, but I'm with him," said a familiar voice. "I'll have a matcha green tea latte, please." "Okay." While the cashier was punching in that order, Todoroki turned to see who had come up to him. It was none other than 𝗵𝗃𝗃. "Anything else?" asked the barista. "That's it," said Todoroki and 𝗵𝗃𝗃. Todoroki reached for his wallet, but 𝗵𝗃𝗃 was quicker on the draw, using her phone to pay for both of them. "You have impeccable timing," said Todoroki. "I admire that in a woman." 𝗵𝗃𝗃 smiled. "You know, I haven't known you for that long, but already you seem like a real sweetheart. You're not the first woman to say that to me, but thanks." "You're welcome. So tell me about yourself. Where are you originally from?" "I was born in Japan, but my parents moved to Modesto when I was 3. How about you?" "My grandfather was born in Japan, but he moved to New York when he was 9, so my father was the first Todoroki born here in America." "Interesting. I never would have guessed. It's my name, isn't it?" "Exactly. By the way, how did you get that name?" "The 2 characters that make up my first name mean burning and freezing. My father gave me this name as a reflection of my quirk." "Way cool. Personally, I don't think much of it. I hate my father very much." "Why?" "From the day I was born, he treated me like a weapon as opposed to an actual human being with wants, needs, fears, and hopes." By this time, the barista had finished preparing their drinks, so Todoroki and 𝗵𝗃𝗃 took a seat at the bar by the window, which had a little statue of a goat on it. "So anyways, it really sucks that your father treated you that way," said 𝗵𝗃𝗃. Todoroki finished taking a sip of his coffee. "That's not even the half of it. My mother, whom I hold very dearly, was locked in Bellevue for years because she poured boiling water over my left eye, hence the scar." 𝗵𝗃𝗃 dropped her jaw. "Oh, I'm sorry. That must have been really hard on you." "That would be an understatement, 𝗵𝗃𝗃." Without question, 𝗵𝗃𝗃 gave Todoroki a hug. Not knowing how else to handle it, he hugged her back. After years of being denied such affection, it felt so liberating for Todoroki to receive a woman's touch like this. If all women felt as soft, warm, and cuddly as 𝗵𝗃𝗃 did, he wanted more hugs. The fact that she was pressing her cheek against his was a nice touch. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 eventually let go, but not before both parties had received quite a bit of oxytocin. "Thanks," said Todoroki. "I haven't known you for that long, but I'm starting to like you." He took a sip of his coffee. "You're welcome," said 𝗵𝗃𝗃. "You look like you needed that anyways, so I'm happy to do that." Anyways, tell me about why you moved here." 𝗵𝗃𝗃 put down her latte. "I work for a graphic design firm, and they offered me a job here with really good pay, so I took it." "Interesting. Do you like your job?" 𝗵𝗃𝗃 gave a thumbs up. "Very much. Now enough about my job. Tell me about yours." "I'm a cop, a detective, to be more precise." "Ooh, awesome. What made you want to be a cop?" "One of my primary motivations was because I had no desire to become mayor like my father was." Wait. Your father was the mayor. "It's not something I like to talk about much, but I feel comfortable around you, which is why I brought it up." "Still, that is totally cool. Anyways, tell me more about what you do as a detective." "I won't say much about exactly what I do, but I'm the only person in this specialized unit created by the commissioner. So you must do some pretty exciting stuff, then." Todoroki nodded and took another sip of his coffee. After they'd finished their drinks and spent some time looking lovingly into each other's eyes, Todoroki and 𝗵𝗃𝗃 exited the cafe. "Hey, I had a good time with you tonight," said 𝗵𝗃𝗃. "So did I anyways. Would you care to walk me back home?" "Of course." And so, Todoroki walked east down the street with 𝗵𝗃𝗃. During the walk, he thought about 𝗵𝗃𝗃. She seemed very nice, but on the other hand, something seemed off about her, though he couldn't exactly place it. Still, he knew that all suspects were innocent until proven guilty, so he decided to go along with her for now. After crossing 10th Ave, they soon reached an apartment next to a small park. "Hey, thanks, Shoto. I really appreciate it. Unfortunately, you won't live long enough to appreciate it yourself." Giggling, 𝗵𝗃𝗃 grabbed Todoroki by the shoulders and attempted to bite him on the neck. However, he shoved her away and drew his Model 29. Unfortunately, before he could even get a beat on her, he found himself hurled across the street and into the nearest apartment building. He survived the impact, but had dropped his Model 29 in the process. Todoroki reached for his Uzi and had detached it from the 𝗬𝗪𝗔𝗄𝗃 rig when he got blown sideways, again dropping the weapon. Not wanting to risk getting thrown while attempting to get his guns back, Todoroki instead shot an ice attack at 𝗵𝗃𝗃. However, she shattered all of the ice with a shockwave generated by her quirk. By now, the sounds of the battle had drawn the attention of a number of residents, some of whom had called the police. Meanwhile, Todoroki shot a few more ice attacks at Hamasaki, but every time, she just shattered it. Knowing that repeated use of his cold side would cause him to freeze up, Todoroki instead shot a massive flame at Hamasaki. Again, this proved ineffective as she used the shockwaves to blow out the flames. He readied another flame attack, but she threw him on his back with another shockwave, and before he could get up, she ran over and straddled him. "Oh, I'm sorry, but you're just too much fun when you struggle," said Hamasaki. "Don't worry, though, I'll end you as quickly as possible." Hamasaki giggled before leaning in to bite Todoroki. He attempted to push her away, but she was too strong even for him. With inevitability closing in, he prayed that his death would be as painless as possible. He even imagined that blood loss would feel just like falling asleep forever. However, before Hamasaki could end Todoroki's life, a shot rang out, and Hamasaki had lost a good chunk of her head. Todoroki pushed her corpse off of him and got up to see who had saved him, and for him, it was a most unexpected sight. Standing on the sidewalk was a woman with long, fluffy, 𝗬𝗍𝐿𝐵 dark green hair, matching green eyes, and freckles. She was wearing a long gray wool coat and black leggings with black Doc Martens boots. What also caught his attention was her weapon of choice, a nickel-plated Colt Python with a 4-inch barrel. She lowered her weapon and hurried over to Todoroki. "Hey, are you okay?" asked the woman. "I'm fine," replied Todoroki. "I almost had her, though." The woman smiled. "Well, I guess you're lucky I was around, then. I could have done without your help. Thank you very much." The woman frowned. "Excuse me, but I just saved your life. The least you could do is say thank you." "Sorry, I'm just not used to other people having to save me." The woman's smile returned. "Hey, it's okay. Sometimes, we all need a helping hand every now and then. Anyways, thank you. Now if you'll excuse me, I must retrieve my weapons." Todoroki turned towards where he thought his Model 29 might be. "Wait, aren't you going to tell me your name?" "I'm Shoto Todoroki." The woman dropped her jaw and gasped. "Wait, you're telling me that you're related to former Mayor NG Todoroki, aka Endeavor, the #1 hero. What does it fucking matter to you?" The woman frowned again. "Look, I can understand if you're traumatized by what you went through, but please don't swear at me for being amazed by you." Todoroki sighed. "Sorry. Thing is, I never thought much of my father, Miss Midoriya, Izuku Midoriya. Well, anyways, I really must get going, Midoriya. Have a good night." Midoriya smiled. "You too." By this time, a couple of our MPs showed up. Todoroki approached the officers who got out. "Hey, Two-Face, we heard there was a huge disturbance over here," said one officer. "You okay?" Todoroki nodded. "Everything's been resolved, Menendez. Now if you'll excuse me, I must retrieve my weapons." Todoroki went to retrieve his guns, while Midoriya made herself scarce and the officers investigated the scene. Because he'd gotten such crappy sleep the night before, Todoroki had 2 cans of Mountain Dew instead of 1. His shirt of choice for Wednesday was a 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗏𝗧 t-shirt, one of his favorite shirts. As usual, he conversed with Bennett. "So, how'd your first date go?" asked Bennett. "I don't want to talk about it." Bennett raised an eyebrow. "That bad? Huh. Even worse than that." Bennett put a hand on Todoroki's shoulder. "Hey, I don't know exactly how you feel, but man, I've been on my fair share of terrible dates. I'm just lucky that I found Julie. Just be lucky that neither Julie nor any of the other women you've dated turned out to be the very thing that you were assigned to hunt down." Bennett gave Todoroki an awkward look, which told Todoroki that Bennett had gotten the gist of what he was saying. After doing some paperwork, Todoroki entered Malcolm's office. "Yeah, what the hell do you want, Todoroki?" "Sir, I've been thinking about what you said 2 days ago, and effective after this shift, I'd like to take a week's vacation ... if that's permissible with you. Besides, Captain Fraser says the binge drinker hasn't killed since yesterday, and I have good reason to believe she was killed last night." Malcolm gave a stare of disbelief to Todoroki. Then, he sighed. "Well ... all right. Lord knows it done enough damage to this city anyhow." Todoroki nodded. "Thank you, sir. Now if you'll excuse me, I have some paperwork to fill out." Todoroki got up from his seat and exited Malcolm's office. For the first time in a while, Malcolm breathed a sigh of relief, knowing he didn't have to put up with Todoroki's crap for a week. Nothing notable happened the rest of the day for Todoroki. After his shift, he took a warm shower, dried off and collapsed into bed. When he woke up, he couldn't remember what he dreamed about, but he knew he had a dream of some sort. His waking routine wasn't much different, either, save for the fact that he woke up at a different time from what he usually woke up on workdays, and he valued days when he could wake up on his own terms as opposed to the NYPD's terms. After working out and throwing on an Acid Maniac t-shirt in addition to his vest, watch and wrist, Todoroki crashed on his old couch, fired up Netflix on his PlayStation 5 and decided to put on an episode of Miami Action. However, after the red-hot opening theme, The King of the Streets by 𝗧𝗵𝗲 concluded, he was getting a real itch to get out of his apartment. He didn't care exactly where he went, he just needed to get out, so he shut off his PS5. Being cautious, perhaps borderline paranoid, Todoroki grabbed his Model 29 and Uzi before setting out, also putting on his M65 to conceal them. After putting on his combat boots, he stepped outside and, "Good afternoon, Todoroki." Todoroki turned around and saw Midoriya standing there, dressed in a pine green zippered hoodie in addition to her leggings and Doc Martens. "Oh, it's you," said Todoroki. "What do you want?" "Oh, I couldn't help but notice you were going out. It's actually a pretty nice day for November." "So it is. Now if you'll excuse me, I must get going." Todoroki proceeded down the hallway. "Wait." Midoriya ran after Todoroki, who turned around. "You're awfully persistent," said Todoroki. "I'm not sure I like this. Tell me what you want or leave me alone." Midoriya held her hands behind her back. "Well, I was thinking ... see ... I'm new in town, and I was looking for somebody to hang out with. Can I hang out with you?" Todoroki crossed his arms. "The last time somebody asked to hang out with me, I nearly got fucked. Ergo, my answer is no." Midoriya clasped her hands together in front of her. "But I'm a good girl. I promise I'm not a vampire or anything." "Somehow, I find that hard to believe. Really, I don't bite. The last girl didn't look like she did, either, and you know what happened. Now fuck off and leave me alone." Now forming tears in her eyes, Midoriya grabbed Todoroki's arms. "How can you be so cold?" said Midoriya. "I'm just trying to get to know you better. Please, don't let me be lonely. I'll do anything for you. I promise." Todoroki looked in Midoriya's eyes. As much as he wasn't sure about her, he was actually beginning to feel guilty about pushing her away. Looking into those desperate green eyes of hers, he found it hard to ignore her tears. Surely, being a cop, he would have known if she was trying to pull a fast one on him, and she seemed earnest in her desire to get to know him better. Thus, he sighed. "All right, you win," said Todoroki. "We can hang out." Midoriya smiled. "Really? Oh, thank you so much." Midoriya gave Todoroki a big hug. Todoroki gasped when this happened, but even so, he returned the gesture. In doing so, he discovered that not only was she even softer, warmer and more cuddly than Hamasaki, but he already felt a genuine sense of connection with her. To him, she seemed like the kind of woman that he could be proud to introduce to his mother. Similarly, in spite of the frosty reception she'd gotten from Todoroki earlier, Midoriya got all sorts of good feelings from being around him. Being just a few inches shorter than him, she felt secure as she rested her head against his shoulder. She could tell, deep down inside, that he wasn't as cold as his initial demeanor suggested. Eventually, Midoriya let go. "Midoriya, if it's all right with you, there's this cafe on West 47th that I'd like to take you to. Actually, I was going to make some tea. Would you like some?" "I'll have some." "Great." Midoriya led Todoroki to her apartment. Upon entering, he noted it looked less militaristic and foreboding than his. Hers had more than a few posters and knickknacks dedicated to the legendary symbol of peace. All Might. He knew the name very well, especially considering the guy had permanently defeated the infamous Vlad the Impaler, better known as Count Dracula. All Might had disappeared a few years ago, but his legacy lived on. That aside, upon entering, Todoroki took off his boots and set them aside the welcome mat. As for his jacket, he took it off and threw it on a nearby coat rack. Midoriya gasped when she saw his guns. "Wow, those are impressive," said Midoriya. "They've saved my life on numerous occasions," said Todoroki. "Where would you like me to put them?" "Put them wherever you like. I promise I won't touch them." Todoroki elected to keep his guns on for now and followed Midoriya into the dining room, where she poured some water into a tea kettle, put the kettle on the stove and turned it on. Todoroki took his holster and 𝗬𝗪𝗔's rig off before draping them over the back of one of the chairs at the dining room table. They both sat down. "Tell me about yourself," said Midoriya. "How long have you been living in New York?" "I was born and raised here. Initially, I lived in Greenpoint, over in Brooklyn, but when I enrolled in the John Jay College, I moved to Manhattan." "What about you?" "I was actually born and raised in San Francisco, but I moved here because of my line of work, which is, I'm a bounty hunter. A suspect I was pursuing fled San Francisco and was last seen here, so I moved here." "A bounty hunter? Well, I guess that explains how you were able to afford a Colt Python." "Actually, until my latest case, work had been kind of slow." "Well, it certainly won't be that slow for you nowadays." "I guess not. I miss the more relaxed pace of San Francisco, but I've always wanted to go to New York." "You picked a hell of a city to move to. Did you know that 7 of the 10 zombie outbreaks in the past decade in America happened here? 4 in Manhattan alone, right?" Todoroki raised his eyebrows. "Yes, how did you know?" "I study a lot about supernatural creatures." Todoroki nodded. "I see. If you'll excuse me, I have to get the tea leaves ready." "What kind of tea would you like? Green tea, Earl Grey, Darjeeling, or lemon?" "Earl Grey, please." "Do you like it strong or weak?" It has to be strong. Midoriya got up from her seat, grabbed a couple of tea infusers and filled them with some tea leaves, Earl Grey for him and green tea for herself. By this time, the teapot was whistling, so she grabbed a couple of coffee mugs, an All Might one for her and a Dawn of the Dead one for him, put the infusers in the appropriate mugs and poured some water over them. While they were waiting for the tea, Todoroki looked over Midoriya's features. He admired the way the sunlight coming through the window enhanced her profile, and her hair gave off a heavenly glow, too. He also wondered what kind of figure she had. Though judging by her legs and how soft she felt, he presumed that she had a good set of curves. Though a loner by nature, the more Todoroki looked at her, the more he wanted her, and consequently, the more he fantasized about making love to her. That aside, Midoriya dunked the infusers a couple of times once she perceived the tea to be ready and set them aside. She then moved the mugs and looked over at Todoroki, only to notice him staring at her. "Hey, are you okay?" asked Midoriya. Todoroki blinked, and then blushed. Yes. Okay, so how much sugar do you want in your tea? Not too much. Midoriya grabbed a small spoon and put a little bit of sugar in Todoroki's tea, putting at least twice that much in hers. After stirring, she brought the mugs over, sat down and held hers out towards him. "A toast," said Todoroki. "To what?" "To a healthy and prosperous friendship." "Sounds good." Midoriya and Todoroki toasted, and they each took a sip of tea. Though usually a coffee person by nature, Todoroki appreciated a well-brewed cup of tea, and judging by the unique, vivid flavor of the cup he had, his new companion had done a most exemplary job. "Midoriya, please, call me 𝗧𝗪𝗏. All my friends call me that." Todoroki lowered his mug slightly. "𝗧𝗪𝗏, a curious nickname. Where did you get it?" Midoriya rubbed the back of her head. "Well, this one boy I knew used it as a contraction of defenseless Izuku, but another boy really liked it and thought it sounded short and sweet, so I reclaimed it as a symbol of pride." "Interesting." Todoroki took another sip of tea. "Anyways, tell me about your line of work." "I'm a detective in the NYPD. To be honest, I'm a member of a special unit created by the commissioner ... the only member thus far." 𝗧𝗪𝗏 finished taking a sip. "Very cool. What exactly is it that you do?" "My job is not only to hunt supervillains, but also otherworldly creatures such as vampires, werewolves, and zombies." "Wow, no wonder you carry a Smith & Wesson Model 29 and an Uzi. They are quite helpful. I presume you also hunt such creatures, so I'd recommend getting an automatic weapon if I were you, too." "Actually, I have a .45 caliber Mach 10 in my closet." 𝗧𝗪𝗏 took another sip. Todoroki finished taking a sip. "Interesting. Does it come with the 𝐒𝐻𝐢𝐵𝐵𝐺 suppressor?" 𝗧𝗪𝗏 nodded. "It does. By the way, do you make your own ammo for hunting supernatural creatures?" "If you're referring to the bullets themselves, there's a guy in the Marines who forges those for me, but I do load my own ammunition. I prefer a higher magnum load in my Model 29, and I have to have a higher pressure load in my Uzi for it to cycle properly." 𝗧𝗪𝗏's eyes widened. "Well, that's very cool. I also find that reloading one's own ammunition is cheaper than buying commercial-grade ammunition, not to mention more satisfying." Todoroki took another sip. "But doesn't it also depend on what caliber of ammo you use?" Todoroki lowered his mug and nodded. "Very perceptive, especially in the case of .44 Magnum ammunition. The savings helped me to buy a supercharger for my car." "I didn't know you had a car. I thought a lot of New Yorkers took taxis. As a police officer, I find that having my own car affords me better opportunities to catch criminals than any other form of transportation." "I see." Perceiving it to be cool enough, Todoroki finished off the rest of his tea. "That was really good tea, 𝗧𝗪𝗏." 𝗧𝗪𝗏 lowered her mug. "Glad you enjoyed it. What else would you like to do with me? I'm largely free for the rest of the day if you wanted to hang out some more. Why don't we binge watch Miami Action together?" Todoroki's eyes widened. "You're a fan of that show, too?" "Of course. I've been watching it ever since it premiered." "Then I'll gladly watch it with you." "Awesome." 𝗧𝗪𝗏 led Todoroki over to her blue corduroy couch, where she fired up her Xbox Series X and put on Netflix for Miami Action. Oddly enough, she put on the same episode that Todoroki had put on when he got bored with the show. This time, however, he felt more engaged with it than when he watched it alone. The neon shone more brightly, the synthwave soundtrack pulsated more, and the gunfights were that much more exciting. As much as they loved the show, however, 𝗧𝗪𝗏 shut off her Xbox after the second episode they watched. "Why did you shut the Xbox off?" asked Todoroki. "I was enjoying that show." 𝗧𝗪𝗏 smiled. "So was I, but I decided that we should get out and take a walk together." "Fair enough. Just one question." "Yes?" 𝗧𝗪𝗏 frowned. "Why were you laughing so hard during the show?" "Oh, I just laugh whenever the bad guys get killed while watching violent movies and shows." "That's not a problem for you ... is it?" 𝗧𝗪𝗏 smiled. "I mean, that's kinda weird, but on the other hand, you have a really cute laugh." Todoroki blushed. After grabbing his jacket, boots and guns, Todoroki was out on West 52nd Street, taking a walk with 𝗧𝗪𝗏. You were right, 𝗧𝗂𝐁. The weather actually is quite pleasant for this time of the year. Yeah, and best of all, I get to share it with a new friend. Todoroki raised an eyebrow. Wait, you already consider me a friend? Why not? Aren't friends people who do activities they enjoy with each other? That is a good point. I just never expected you to take so kindly to me that quickly. Look, I've seen people like you before. Outside, you're so cold, even brutally unforgiving at times, but I know that deep down inside, you really are a good person who would do anything to protect the people you care about and just wants to be cared for. You really think so? 𝗧𝗂𝐁 smiled. I know so. 𝗧𝗂𝐁 held one of Todoroki's hands. He gasped softly and blushed when she did this. However, he did nothing to reject her gesture. She was right. After all, for many years, his cold, distant nature had repelled many, and yet he always longed for someone to stay by his side. Granted, he was rather weirded out that 𝗧𝗂𝐁 was moving so fast with him. But thus far, she had done nothing to fall into disfavor with him, and not only did she save his life, but he thought she was very beautiful. Thus far, their walk was going quite swimmingly. However, when they crossed 8th Avenue, that was when things went south. Help! Zombies! Run for your lives! Somebody save us! Both Todoroki and 𝗧𝗂𝐁 noticed a crowd of people fleeing Guthrie's steakhouse. Oh, fuck me, said Todoroki, drawing his Model 29. Him and 𝗧𝗂𝐁, who drew her python, hurried over to the restaurant, where a group of zombies was shambling out. Without question, the two of them proceeded to blow the zombies' heads off. Considering how slowly the zombies proceeded, neither Todoroki nor 𝗧𝗂𝐁 had an extremely difficult time blasting them. However, considering both of them were using revolvers, that meant that they didn't have as much ammo available per reload as they would had they been using semi-auto pistols. Nevertheless, both of them had more than enough firepower to take down a zombie with one round. At times, the zombies got uncomfortably close, but Todoroki and 𝗧𝗂𝐁 remedied this by alternating with their reloads. Using speedloaders helped, too. Soon enough, all of the zombies had been killed. Nice shooting, 𝗧𝗂𝐁. Todoroki holstered his Model 29. Thanks, I thought those zombies had us for. Suddenly, 𝗧𝗂𝐁 and Todoroki's conversation was disrupted by a loud crash. They turned in the direction of the sound, only to discover a super zombie, which was not only stronger than the regular zombies, but could run really fast as opposed to shuffling around slowly. Time to kick things up a notch, said Todoroki, detaching his Uzi from its 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 super zombie stronger, but it also took quite a few bullets. Knowing that the super zombie would likely bite at least one of them at this rate, Todoroki quickly threw his Uzi to his left hand and used his right to shoot ice at the super zombie and freeze it. In doing so, he left its head exposed, the better to allow him and 𝗧𝗪𝗏 to kill it more effectively. Once the super zombie was done for, Todoroki melted the ice. "Guess that makes 5, said Todoroki. "Come on, let's check for survivors." Their weapons still drawn, Todoroki and 𝗧𝗪𝗏 entered the restaurant, stepping carefully lest any still living zombies latch onto their legs and bite them. For a moment, it appeared that all of the zombies had been exterminated and that no survivors remained. However, they spotted 4 people cowering in one corner of the restaurant, shaking like the Dickens, a couple even in tears. One of them, a blonde woman with shoulder-length hair, turned towards the two and clasped her hands together. "Oh, thank God you two are here," cried the woman. There were zombies everywhere. Todoroki looked over the woman briefly. Then, he raised his Uzi and shot her in the head. "Todoroki, what was that about?" exclaimed 𝗧𝗪𝗏. "Did you not see the bite mark on her wrist?" said Todoroki. "Had I let her live, she would have turned into a zombie." "Zombie my ass." A Hispanic man with a goatee, who was slightly shorter than Todoroki, got up to confront him. "Who are you to go around shooting innocent people?" Todoroki flashed his shield. "I just so happen to be the sole member of the NYPD's Supernatural Crimes Unit. As such, I have extensive training and experience in dealing with vampires, werewolves, zombies, and other otherworldly creatures that are threatening to disrupt your life as well as those of other innocent New Yorkers. If you don't like it, you can get a foot up your ass for all I care." "Hey, up yours, too." The man flipped off Todoroki, who simply ignored him and checked up on the other 2 survivors, a brunette with her hair in a pixie cut and a white man with short, wavy black hair. "How are you two feeling?" asked Todoroki. "I am really scared," replied the brunette. "I'm just glad you two were here." "Yeah, but did you really have to shoot Marcy?" asked the man. Todoroki put a hand on his hip. "If you knew anything about zombies, you'd know that once a person is bitten, there is no way to stop them from becoming a zombie. Her sacrifice was for the good of you and everyone else in this city." "All right, I guess." Todoroki and 𝗧𝗪𝗏 proceeded to leave when they ran into somebody else. "Damn," exclaimed Bennett. "What the hell happened here?" "Zombie outbreak," replied Todoroki. "I think we got all the zombies, but please see if you can get all the other survivors tracked down. I want to make sure nobody else has been infected." Bennett gave a thumbs up. You got it, 𝗵𝘃𝗲. Say, who's this young lady? Bennett, this is my new friend Izuku Midoriya. Deco, this is Detective First Grade Eddie Bennett, one of my friends in the NYPD. Deco smiled. Nice to meet you. Same here. Deco and Bennett shook hands. So tell me, how did you meet Todoroki? Asked Bennett. I was taking a walk when I heard the sound of him battling somebody, and I noticed that he was about to be bitten by a vampire, so I saved his life. I'll thank you not to mention that embarrassment, said Todoroki. Hey man, sometimes a 𝗵𝘃𝗲 needs a helping hand, said Bennett. It ain't nothing to be ashamed of. Right, that aside, now that you're here, I wanted to ask you about that Jets game on Sunday. What about it? If you have enough extra tickets, I'd like to bring Deco with me. Oh, Deco tilted her head slightly. Why? If it makes any difference to you. The Jets are up against the Niners, replied Todoroki. Deco smiled. Hey, I'd love to go. Can we? Sure thing, said Bennett. All right. Deco pumped her fist. Todoroki smiled slightly, actually anticipating getting to go to the game with Deco. For lunch, Todoroki and Deco headed to a nearby McDonald's on Broadway. Todoroki ordered a quarter-pounder meal with bacon and a Barq's root beer, while Deco ordered a crispy chicken sandwich meal with a Coke. Hey, I know I don't have as much experience as you when it comes to fighting supernatural creatures, but I really admire your bravery when it comes to fighting those, said Deco. Thank you, Deco. Todoroki took a bite out of his burger. Say, how did you get to become the only member of the Supernatural Crimes Unit? Deco took a bite of her sandwich. Todoroki swallowed. It was a complicated process. The commissioner looked at several factors when deciding who to select, such as years on the job, disciplinary record, and criminals apprehended. Then again, I suppose the fact that my father was one of the top pro heroes in addition to being mayor of this city helped. Interesting. So what made you want to become a cop? Like All Might, I wanted to help people, but I figured that the NYPD could use men of my caliber, not to mention I refused to follow in my father's footsteps. You must really hate your father given what you've told me about him. Let's just say that every time I use the hot portion of my quirk, I feel like I want to throw up. Todoroki took another bite. Deco put down her sandwich. Why should you? I realize children inherit quirks from their parents, but a quirk is what you make it, regardless of your history. You decide how you use it. It's yours. Your quirk, not his. Todoroki paused in the middle of chewing and slowly lowered his quarter-pounder. After all these years of repressed anger against his father, suddenly, this woman came along and used her mere words to make him feel better about half of his quirk. Without further chewing, he swallowed. Deco, that was profound. For so long, I shunned my father and much of society. But no matter how much I try to withdraw, you give me hope, you give me faith in society, and most of all, you give me all the more reason to stand up for people I've never met before. As much as I'm reluctant to admit this, the more I hang out with you, the more I like you. Deco smiled. Well, a good friend of mine encouraged me to save others with a smile on my face, so I thought I'd share one. Thank you. Actually, while we're still talking, I also wanted to thank you for not saying anything about the scar over my left eye. Todoroki took another bite. You're welcome. Actually, I have to be honest, I don't mind it at all. In fact, I think it makes you look more handsome. Todoroki covered his mouth to prevent himself from spitting up his food as his eyes widened, and he blushed. As much as he liked Deco, hearing anyone call him handsome because of his scar was way out of left field for him. Deco frowned. Todoroki, are you okay? Todoroki nodded, and then swallowed. I'm fine. Nobody ever called me handsome for having that scar before. Usually, my fellow officers call me Two-Face. Deco crossed her hands over her chest. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to surprise you like that. It's okay. At this point, you haven't done anything to warrant my wrath. Deco smiled and put her hand on the back of her head. Well, that's a relief. After lunch, Todoroki and Deco walked for at least another 15 minutes before returning to her apartment. So, what else do you want to do? Asked Deco. Todoroki stroked his chin. I was curious as to what video games you have. Oh, I've got a bunch of good ones. I've got Miami Action, Deadline South Beach, Perfect Dark, Superface Puncher 3, Halo, and more. Take your pick. Why don't we play Miami Action, Deadline South Beach? Great choice. And so, Deco fired up her Xbox Series X and popped in the disc for Miami Action, Deadline South Beach. For multiplayer, she set up a standard deathmatch in the Dodge Island level, 10-minute time limit. For her character, she chose Dan Thompson, one of the two main protagonists, while he chose Christina Gilchrist, one of the supporting protagonists. When the game got started, Todoroki seemed like he might have an advantage as he picked up an M16A1 and mowed down Deco a few times, laughing while he did it. However, she found a Beretta BM59 and picked him off at ranges exceeding those of the M60. By the time the game was over, Deco had won 12-5. Well played, Deco. Deco smiled. Thank you. Wanna play again? Yes, and so, 𝗧𝐭 and Todoroki played a few more rounds. Overall, 𝗧𝐭 won some, and Todoroki won some, so they were pretty much even. 𝗧𝐭, may we play something else? Sure. What about Superface Puncher 3? Okay. And so, 𝗧𝐭 ejected Miami Action, Deadline South Beach and put in Superface Puncher 3, a fighting game. Like Miami Action, Deadline South Beach, neither 𝗧𝐭 nor Todoroki seemed to have a clear advantage in terms of how many matches they won. Nevertheless, they both had an enjoyable time, especially Todoroki, who felt more energized from spending time with 𝗧𝐭, as much as he enjoyed being alone. There were times when he genuinely felt lonely, and being with her made that feel better. However, after a certain number of matches, 𝗧𝐭 put down her controller. Hey, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling hungry, so I'm gonna prepare supper, said 𝗧𝐭. Todoroki looked at his Timex. It is around the time when I'd usually eat on weekends, so I'll have some too if you're making extra. 𝗧𝐭 smiled. Great, just wait here, okay. Todoroki nodded. Meanwhile, 𝗧𝐭 went to the dining room to prepare supper. As Todoroki sat on the couch, he reflected on his relationship with 𝗧𝐭 so far. He found it rather unusual that she'd taken such a liking to him so quickly, and this made him wonder if she was hiding something. On the other hand, she did save his life from a vampire, and she had much admiration for a hero that he too admired, so he figured she couldn't be all bad. However, his train of thought was disrupted by a savory smell he detected from the kitchen, so he headed over there. He couldn't tell what she was cooking, but it seemed appetizing. Proceeding carefully, Todoroki went up to 𝗧𝐭 and hugged her from behind, causing her to gasp out of surprise. Todoroki, I'm sorry, 𝗧𝐭. Whatever you're cooking, it smells good. And I just wanted to let you know how much I appreciate what you've done for me. 𝗧𝐭 chuckled. Thanks. Now, if you don't mind, would you please let go of me? As you wish. Todoroki let go of 𝗧𝐭 and sat at the table as he awaited whatever she was cooking. It didn't take her too much longer, however, and she brought a plate right over to him once she was done. Enjoy, said 𝗧𝐭. What is it? Katsudon with sauce. Todoroki nodded, and then cut into it and took a bite. He nodded as the savory mix of pork, panko breading and sauce melted in his mouth. How is it? Asked 𝗧𝐭. Todoroki swallowed. It's very good. Granted, I much prefer 𝗧𝗏, but I can tell you made this with love. 𝗧𝐭 smiled. Well, I do love cooking, and I especially like cooking for people I like. That reminds me, you've taken so well to me in just a short time. Just what is it that you see in me that others don't? 𝗧𝐭 was about to take a bite, but lowered her fork. Well, you're a very noble person who's willing to stand up for others even in the face of danger. You're not afraid to say what's on your mind. And you're drop-dead handsome. Todoroki not only averted his gaze, but covered his face as well. 𝗧𝐭 frowned. Hey, are you okay? Asked 𝗧𝐭. I'm fine. Whenever you call me handsome, I feel weird and tingly. 𝗧𝗭 smiled. That's how you're supposed to feel. She took a bite of her katsudon. Todoroki slowly uncovered his face, revealing that he was blushing. Well, I have to be honest. Then, you're the most beautiful woman I've ever met. 𝗧𝐭 nearly choked on her katsudon. What? Said Todoroki. Composing herself, 𝗧𝐭 swallowed. I'm sorry. I've been called beautiful before, but knowing that somebody considers me the most beautiful woman they ever met that makes me feel so happy. And knowing that I made you feel happy, I actually feel somewhat happy myself. Todoroki took another bite. 𝗬𝗏 clasped her hands together and held them to the side of her head as she smiled. At one point towards the end of supper, the oven timer went off. What was that? Asked Todoroki. Oh, that reminds me, the cookies are ready. Cookies? 𝗧𝐭 opened up the oven and pulled out a pan of chocolate chip cookies, which she set on top of the oven. She waited for a bit, and then grabbed two. Would you like one? Asked 𝗧𝐭. Yes, please. Todoroki took the cookie that was offered to him and took a bite. He marveled at just how rich, gooey and chewy it was. How is it? Asked 𝗧𝐭. Todoroki swallowed. This might just be the best cookie I've ever had. Thanks, I worked pretty hard on them. It shows. After supper, Todoroki took his plate to the sink and grabbed a sponge. However, 𝗧𝐭 tapped him on the arm. Don't worry, I'll take care of the dishes, said 𝗧𝐭. Todoroki nodded and let 𝗧𝐭 take care of the dishes. He then sat down on her couch. Not too long after, she entered. What do you feel like doing now? Asked 𝗧𝐭. You like music, right? 𝗧𝐭 smiled and clasped her hands together in front of her crotch. Of course, I love music. Then why don't we listen to some music? All right, just let me get my stereo ready. 𝗧𝐭 turned on her vintage realistic stereo, and Todoroki pulled out his smartphone. Okay, how do I connect to the stereo? Asked Todoroki. Just look for the 𝐒𝐭𝐴 Bluetooth adapter, replied 𝗧𝐭. Todoroki nodded, and then searched for the requisite adapter. After hearing a beep from the stereo speakers, he flipped through his collection and settled on 𝗳𝗏𝗺 by the Sword by Slayer. He then proceeded to headbang. 𝗧𝐭's reaction, on the other hand, was to cover her ears. Todoroki. Todoroki ignored 𝗃𝗀 and kept rocking out. Todoroki, shut this off. Reluctantly, Todoroki paused the song. What? Said Todoroki. 𝗃𝗀 uncovered her ears. Are you nuts? How can you listen to that awful angry music? What's wrong with Slayer? They're a perfectly cromulent band. Maybe to you, but some people would prefer to listen to stuff that doesn't blow their eardrums out. Todoroki uncrossed his arms. Such as? 𝗃𝗀 smiled. Well, just let me connect to the stereo system and I'll show you. Todoroki took his phone and disconnected from the Bluetooth connector, and 𝗃𝗀 took her phone and connected it. Once this was accomplished, she put on a more mellow yet still rockin' song, Rock and Roll Dancin' by the Beckmeyer Brothers. Without question, 𝗃𝗀 began dancing to it. Todoroki, who was more used to heavy metal, wasn't sure what to think of it at first, but once the beat really kicked in, he nodded his head in time to it. In fact, he grew to like the song, mainly because it reminded him of some of the 1980s Polish rock songs that he listened to. Sharing in the experience with 𝗃𝗀 made it that much better, too. As a matter of fact, he found that life in general felt better being shared with her, even if he still had much that he had yet to learn about her. While the music that 𝗃𝗀 listened to was still recognizably rockin', it tended to include more general hard rock, plus related subgenres such as blues rock, glam rock, hair metal, southern rock in addition to plain, straight-up heavy metal. Her favorite artists including AC/DC, Slade, ZZ Top, Rat and Scorpion. Even if not all of the songs were on the level of what he liked, Todoroki nevertheless found the selection to be agreeable. However, after playing Supernaut by Black Sabbath, 𝗃𝗀 stopped the music. Why did you stop? Asked Todoroki. I was having an excellent time. 𝗃𝗀 yawned. Me too, but I'm getting tired. I want to take a shower and go to bed. Then I won't trouble you any further. Have a good night, 𝗃𝗀. Todoroki turned around and prepared to walk away. Wait, Todoroki turned around. What? I was thinking. 𝗃𝗀 smiled nervously. Would you like to sleep over for the night? Todoroki nodded. I accept your offer. Just allow me to grab a few things from my apartment. Okay, I'll be taking a shower while you're out. Todoroki exited 𝗃𝗀's apartment and grabbed a fresh change of clothes. His sleepwear, some toiletry supplies, and 2 50-pound hexagonal dumbbells that he usually used whenever he needed to take his workout on the go. After grabbing this stuff, he headed back to 𝗃𝗀's apartment and sat on her couch as he waited for her to get out of the shower. Soon enough, 𝗃𝗀 came out to the living room clad in nothing but a light blue towel. It was here that Todoroki's hunch was confirmed, for he could see that she was indeed busty. Okay, your turn, said 𝗃𝗀. After blinking a couple of times, Todoroki grabbed his sleepwear and headed for the shower. On one hand, he was rather hesitant to use her shampoo and soap, but on the other hand, considering that she'd taken such a liking to him, he figured she might not mind that much. Still, he felt better about using his own stuff, hence why he brought it. The water in 𝗃𝗀's shower felt just as warm and soothing as the water in his apartment, perhaps even a bit more. As he washed up, he was beginning to relish the thought of being naked in front of her, even if he hadn't known her for that long. And even if he normally didn't consider himself an exhibitionist, the thought of her turned him on very much, and it took him a great deal of resolve not to do himself in her shower. Finally, he managed to finish rinsing himself off, and after drying himself, he put on his nightshirt and pajamas before brushing his teeth and flossing. When Todoroki exited the bathroom, he found 𝗃𝗀 standing before him, dressed only in a long all-night nightshirt. Feel better? Asked 𝗃𝗀. Todoroki nodded. Quite. Then let's snuggle together. 𝗃𝗀, as much as I like you, I'm gonna sleep on your couch. But I like you too, and I want to show you how glad I am to have met you. I appreciate that, but I don't think we should be snuggling just yet. Todoroki turned to head for 𝗃𝗀's living room, but she grabbed him by the arm. Please, said 𝗃𝗀. Todoroki turned around, only to notice that 𝗃𝗀 now had tears in her eyes. As much as he found it strange that she wanted to snuggle with him so early in their relationship, she was pretty much the first person he had grown to really like aside from Bennett, and she did save his life, so the answer was obvious. All right, I'll snuggle with you. 𝗃𝗀 smiled. Really? Yeah. 𝗃𝗀 gave Todoroki a big hug, which he returned. Even if she seemed overly enthused with him, he was grateful to have somebody who thus far genuinely cared for him. After she broke away from the hug, she gently grabbed his hand and led him to her bedroom, which was decorated with more All Might stuff, including a big All Might blanket on her bed. They got in bed and snuggled with each other. Todoroki, thanks for spending the day with me. This has been one of the happiest days of my life. No, thank you. Up until I met you, I was content to be alone. But the more time I spend with you, the less horrible this world seems. Hey, I know the world can be a scary place, but believe me, there's so many good things about it, too, and that's why it's worth saving. I believe you. Good night, 𝗃𝗀. Good night. 𝗃𝗀 shut off her bedside lamp, and they went to sleep. While Todoroki still didn't know everything about her, he decided to go along for the ride, hoping that it would lead to a better life for him. Good morning, Todoroki. Todoroki panticulated, only to notice that 𝗧𝐿 had awakened before him. Oh, good morning, 𝗧𝐿. Did you sleep well last night? Better than I ever have. Great, let's go have some breakfast. While breakfast wasn't a huge affair with 𝗧𝐿, she still prepared more than Todoroki ever did, making some ham, French toast and eggs, even brewing a pot of coffee. Todoroki's senses perked up at the mere smell of the coffee. Even if he usually started his day with a Mountain Dew, he appreciated a well-brewed cup of coffee. So, Todoroki paused while cutting into his ham. Yes, I was wondering, would you like to go out to dinner with me later today? I might. Where were you thinking of going? I was looking up restaurants around here, and I found a Mexican place called 𝗵𝗃𝗃 Bar and Grill. Let me see. Todoroki stroked his chin. Oh yes, I recall seeing that place once, but I never ate there. Still, it sounds like it might be good, so I'll go with you. Awesome. Although I must add, Asian cuisine is still my favorite. Even so, I have had my fair share of good Mexican food. Then this might just be enjoyable for both of us. Todoroki nodded. That aside, I wanted to apologize. 𝗧𝐿 raised her eyebrows. Oh, for what? For pushing you away when we first met. I realize that my apology won't undo the fact that I was so cold towards you, but you've been so good to me, and I've come to really enjoy your company. Don't worry about it. Like I said, I know you're a good person. 𝗧𝐿 approached Todoroki, who got out of his seat. Without question, she gave him another big hug, and he returned it without fail. No matter how many times she hugged him, the warm and cuddly feelings never subsided, and in fact, he found her to be a bit more warm and cuddly this time. Furthermore, he enjoyed her touch so much that he shed a few tears. Hey, is everything okay, Todoroki? Todoroki nodded. I'm fine. It's just ... and no one's ever been this kind to me before. It's okay to cry. I'll keep holding you for as long as you need it. And so, Todoroki continued to hold on to 𝗧𝐿. For so long, he'd been denied human companionship. And to have someone like her come along and show him that he deserved to be loved meant more to him than any language could ever describe. Even if he hadn't known her for that long, and even if he still wasn't 100% sure that she wasn't a vampire or something, he already felt such a deep connection with her. Thanks, said Todoroki. Every time I hug you, I like you that much more. 𝗧𝐿 smiled. You're welcome. You are a likable person yourself, you know. I never particularly thought of myself as being likable, but I'm glad you think so highly of me. Hey, you deserve the kindness. Todoroki merely nodded. After blowing his nose and freshening up for the day, Todoroki proceeded to do some push-ups as well as his usual dumbbell exercises. During these exercises, 𝗧𝐿 approached him, clad in nothing but a matching white bra and panties. May I feel your muscles? Asked 𝗧𝐿. Once Todoroki finished his last rep, he put the dumbbells down. Be my guest. Todoroki flexed his muscles, and 𝗧𝐿 proceeded to feel them. She gasped when she did so. Oh my, said 𝗧𝐿. I knew you were strong, but this ... this is still a surprise. A guy like you must attract a lot of women. I attracted you, didn't I? 𝗧𝐿 blushed and shrank away a little. As much as she liked Todoroki, she didn't expect him to be such a huge flirt. After dressing up for the day, Todoroki grabbed his guns and the stuff he'd brought over from his apartment before putting his jacket and boots on. Wait, said 𝗧𝐿, now fully dressed herself. Todoroki paused and turned around. Yes, before you go, would you like to watch a movie with me? Todoroki stroked his chin with his free hand. On second thought, I have time to spare. Did you have one in mind? I'll let you pick. Todoroki followed 𝗧𝐿 to the living room, where she showed off some shelves containing a bunch of DVDs and Blu-rays. He rifled through the collection carefully before picking out SS Death Bastard Regiment. Ooh, that's a good one, said 𝗧𝐿. Todoroki merely nodded, while 𝗧𝐿 put the DVD in her Xbox. Would you like some popcorn, too? Asked 𝗧𝐿. Thanks, but I pass. Todoroki sat on the couch, while 𝗧𝐿 microwaved herself a bag of 𝗲𝗏𝗏 popcorn before starting the movie. Almost immediately, it caught Todoroki's attention. During the movie, 𝗧𝐿 wrapped an arm around him, and having taken a liking to her, he did the same. While he found the gesture rather unusual considering the nature of the movie, he not only relished that she was doing this to him, but also that it was happening during a movie that he genuinely enjoyed. When the movie was over, Todoroki briefly discussed it with 𝗧𝐿. Thanks, 𝗧𝐿. That movie was very good, if somewhat cheesy. Glad you enjoyed it, and I'm glad you chose to spend time with me. Enjoy your day, and see you at dinner tonight. Todoroki nodded. You too. Oh wait, I almost forgot. Let me give you my number. 𝗧𝐿 scribbled down her phone number on a notepad, tore off that particular piece of paper and handed it to Todoroki. May I see that notepad? Asked Todoroki. Sure. Todoroki received the notepad, and then wrote down his number for 𝗧𝐿. He figured that if things kept going the way they were, he might just end up spending the rest of his life with her, but even so, he needed to find out more about her. After heading back to his apartment, Todoroki put his stuff in its proper places and crashed on his living room couch, somehow lacking in energy. Perhaps the constant threat of supernatural creatures was wearing him down. That, or not being on the job, wasn't energizing him as much. In any case, he let his lethargy take him over. As he was dozing off, he dreamed about Deku. "Hey Todoroki, I really like you, and I really want you. Mind if I pull down your pants?" Before Todoroki could even react, Deku undid his belt, unzipped and pulled down his pants as she got to her knees. Todoroki awoke, only to feel a warm, sticky sensation in his genital region. While he liked Deku, and while he fantasized about doing naughty things to her, he hadn't expected anything like this to happen because of her. Still, he read somewhere that orgasms were healthy, and he probably needed it anyways. While he was laying there, he heard Trapped Under Ice by Metallica, which was his ringtone, so he answered his phone. "Hello, Todoroki, it's Bennett. We gathered up the rest of the survivors from the zombie attack at Guthrie's, so get down here and check him out." "Will do. Goodbye." "Bye." Todoroki hung up. After putting his jacket, guns, and boots on, Todoroki headed down to the Midtown North house, where all 8 of the previously unaccounted survivors awaited a disposition from Todoroki. They all fidgeted nervously as he inspected them as with a fine-tooth comb, checking all the likely spots for zombie bites, even some rather unlikely spots. While he knew that a single zombie bite didn't mean instantaneous zombification, he knew that such a process was inevitable, so aside from checking for bite marks, he also performed other checks such as inspecting the victim's eyes, much in the same way that one would do if they were trying to determine if somebody was under the influence of drugs. Soon enough, Todoroki was all done with his inspection, and he had his answer. "All right, all of you are all set. Have a nice day, and stay safe, okay?" All the survivors gave affirmative responses. His inspection complete, Todoroki headed back home, grabbing a grilled chicken sandwich from Bite Delight Deli and grocery on the way for lunch. For the next few hours, he didn't really do anything special save for rocking out to Megadeth's Killing Is My Business, and Business Is Good, and Saxon's Strong Arm of the Law albums, and watching a couple more episodes of Miami Action. After the second episode, he got a call. "Hello, Todoroki, it's Deku. What's up? I'm heading out to the restaurant now." "Understood. See you there." "You too." Todoroki hung up. Having been established in 1979, Mamacita's Bar and Grill had its fair share of proponents, and it was voted as having the best margaritas in Hell's Kitchen. It was a rather modest joint with Mexican-themed paintings on the walls. Shortly after Todoroki arrived, Deku got there. "Hey." Deku gave Todoroki a hug, which he returned. They then waited for someone to attend to them, and a waitress took them to a table that Deku had reserved earlier. Soon enough, another waitress came over. "Hi, welcome to Mamacita's. Can I start you two off with something to drink?" "Orange-flavored Doritos for me, please," said Todoroki. "I'll have a fresh brewed iced tea, please," said Deku. The waitress left to get their drinks, while Todoroki and Deku looked over their menus. "So, have you decided what you're gonna order?" asked Deku. "That's a good question. A bunch of the things on this menu look good, but they also look pricey. Then again, this is New York, so I suppose that was to be expected. Still, I'm sure the food is worth it." "I should hope so." Soon enough, the waitress returned with their drinks. "Are we all set to order?" asked the waitress. Todoroki looked at Deku. "I'm ready when you are." Deku nodded. "I'll have 3 hard tacos with pork, please." The waitress took down Deku's order. "Okay, and you?" "I'll have the steak ranchero, please," said Todoroki. The waitress left to get their orders. "By the way, I never noticed that your eyes are different colors," said Deku. "That's really beautiful." Todoroki blushed. "Thank you." Deku frowned. "Hey, why do you blush whenever I say nice things to you?" "Well, you see, I had a rather rough upbringing, and for much of my life, people ignored me, so for someone like you to come along and recognize me as a good person, that means so much to me." Deku's smile returned. "And so it should. Anyone who risks their life and limb to keep other people safe deserves the kindness." "Well, in that case, I just want to let you know that your beauty is more than skin deep. Also, you have a very nice smile." "Thanks. Like I said, somebody I knew always did his best to save others with a smile on his face, and I wanted to be just like that." Todoroki leaned in a little closer. "That reminds me, you wouldn't happen to be referring to the famous All Might, would you?" Deku dropped her jaw. "Why yes, how did you know?" Todoroki remained frozen and silent for a moment before speaking up. I knew you were an extraordinary woman, but knowing that you are formally acquainted with the All Might of all people, it's not like me to say this, but I'm very envious." Deku smiled nervously and rubbed the back of her head. Well, you're not the first person to say that. Deku, if I said something wrong, I apologize. I just couldn't believe that you knew someone so famous." Deku put a hand up. "Hey, don't worry about it. Actually, I'll admit, I was envious of you knowing that you're related to someone famous yourself." Don't be. My father is the source of many of my troubles. Without saying anything else, 𝗧𝗪𝗏 got up from her seat and hugged Todoroki again. Todoroki, you're a really good person, and I just want to let you know that even if I haven't known you for that long, your happiness matters to me. If there's anything you need, just ask. Thanks. Right now, all I really need is you and your soft touch, and I'm glad to help. 𝗧𝗪𝗏 continued to hold on to Todoroki for quite some time. In the past, he would rather not have been smothered with such feminine affection. But considering that this woman saved his life, he appreciated whatever such gestures he could get from her. By the time she let go of him and returned to her seat, the waitress came back with their food. Todoroki took a piece of his steak ranchero and sniffed it for a bit before taking a bite. He nodded as the savory, salty, and somewhat spicy flavor took over his palate. Similarly, as 𝗧𝗪𝗏 took the first bite of her first taco, she got lost in the tenderness of the pork and the savoriness of the ranchero sauce. How's your food? Asked Todoroki. 𝗧𝗪𝗏 swallowed and then nodded. Great. How's yours? It's good. Thank you for recommending this place. You're welcome. After the meals were all paid for, 𝗧𝗪𝗏 and Todoroki took another walk. You know, you didn't have to pay for everything, but that was really sweet of you, said 𝗧𝗪𝗏. I know. I only did that because I really like you. Oh, 𝗧𝗪𝗏 held hands with Todoroki as they walked. It's not often that I can say that I really like somebody after knowing them for a short time. But you're a unique case, said Todoroki. 𝗧𝗪𝗏 giggled. I could say the same of you. And so, Todoroki and 𝗧𝗪𝗏 continued to walk, not really aiming to go anywhere in particular, just enjoying each other's company. Todoroki couldn't remember the last time he held hands with a girl before he met 𝗧𝗪𝗏. And now that he thought about it, he should have known that something was suspicious about Hamasaki, considering that she didn't hold hands with him on the way back to her apartment. On the other hand, people didn't always hold hands with each other in the earlier stages of dating. Still, he also figured that 𝗧𝗪𝗏 was trustworthy considering that she elected to hold hands with him. Similarly, 𝗧𝗪𝗏 felt good about Todoroki. Even if he had treated her coldly when they first met, she appreciated the fact that he warmed up to her. She thought back to her youth and how she wouldn't have warmed up to people so easily. However, as time went by, she learned to open up, and she also got a feel for which people were worth spending her time with, Todoroki definitely being somebody who was worth her precious time. It wasn't just the fact that she found him so drop-dead handsome. It was also the fact that he was a genuinely good person who chose an honorable path in life. What was that? Todoroki reached inside his jacket for his Model 29 when he thought he heard a strange sound. Him and 𝗧𝗪𝗏 were right next to DeWitt Clinton Park, so they entered, only to discover a group of people with hooded robes standing in a circle in the park's soccer field, so they readied their pistols. Audi clamorem nostrum, et voca hoc ad populum indignum, said the hooded figures. NYPD. Freeze. Todoroki pointed his Model 29 at the hooded figures. However, Todoroki was too late, for a cylindrical beam of orange light emerged from the center of the circle, and shortly thereafter, a demon emerged from the light. This demon resembled a human with a bat's head, clawed hands, and golden eagle's wings. 𝗧𝗪𝗏, go after those cultists. I'll deal with the demon. Right. By now, the cultists had taken notice of Todoroki and 𝗧𝗪𝗏. O 𝗓𝗏𝗧𝗏, we beseech thee, smite these intruding heathens, said the lead cultist, wearing a red robe. Your bidding shall become mine, said the demon known as 𝗓𝗏𝗧𝗏. 𝗓𝗓𝗧𝗏 charged at Todoroki and 𝗧𝗪𝗏, and the former attempted to stop him with an ice attack. However, with a single swipe, the demon destroyed the ice and continued his charge. Fortunately, Todoroki and Deku dodged him before he could land an attack on either of them. Stop. Because the cultists refused to stop, 𝗧𝗪𝗏 opened fire on them. However, one of them used a time-stopping quirk to render her bullets ineffective. Todoroki, I need help. I'm trying, but I'm a little busy at the moment. Todoroki was surfing on ice as he was simultaneously trying to dodge 𝗓𝗏𝗧𝗏's attacks and land a blow on him. At the moment, Todoroki was trying to fill 𝗓𝗏𝗧𝗏 with holes using his 𝐒𝐻𝐢, and while 9mm bullets appeared to do damage, the wounds regenerated quickly. Adding to the problem was that a couple of cultists were trying to use their own quirks on him in addition to whatever profane magics they possess. At one point, he attempted to fill the cultists full of holes, but he encountered the same problem with the time-stopping cultist. 𝗧𝗪𝗏, I've got an idea. What? See if you can distract those cultists. Surely, they can't focus on both of us. Right. At this point, Todoroki stopped focusing attacks on 𝗓𝗏𝗧𝗏 and tried to get around the cultists. Thus far, it appeared that 𝗧𝗪𝗏's python was keeping them busy, so he focused an intense blast of flame on them. It seemed to work, for not only did the time-stopping cultist fail to stop the flame, but all of the cultists got pretty well fried, seeing that they were desperately trying to fan out the flames rather than stopping, dropping, and rolling as sensible people would do. Todoroki dual-wielded his Model 29 and 𝐒𝐻𝐢 and proceeded to gun down the cultists with 𝗧𝗪𝗏's assistance. Now all that remained was 𝗓𝗏𝗧𝗏. Todoroki, do you think you can take the demon down? I'm trying. I have one more idea. 𝐹𝐿ASHFREEZHEATWAV. First, using his ice power, Todoroki quickly switched to his fire to rapidly heat up the air and fire a superheated blast at 𝗂𝗧𝗏. This produced a most brilliant light that illuminated the Big Apple for quite a distance, and by the time it cleared, 𝗂𝗧𝗏 was nowhere to be seen. Todoroki glided back to 𝗧𝗪. Did you get him? Asked 𝗧𝗪. Todoroki nodded while holstering his guns. I think so. Thank you for helping me out. 𝗧𝗪 smiled. You're welcome. 𝗧𝗪 opened her arms wide, and Todoroki approached her, fully expecting another hug. Not only did he get that, but she did something totally unexpected. She kissed him. This proved to be the biggest shock of Todoroki's life, having never been kissed before. On one hand, he felt as his ability to breathe, speak, or do anything of the like had been sucked out of him, and it was so overwhelmingly intoxicating that he thought he was going to pass out. On the other hand, he didn't want her to stop. She was just so heart-stoppingly beautiful that he couldn't help but wrap his arms around her. If this was what heaven felt like, he wanted more. For the first time in his life, he was in a place where he was without the fears or troubles associated with his daily routine, and he was eternally grateful to have experienced this. By the time 𝗧𝗪 broke away from the kiss, which seemed like forever and a half to Todoroki, he was absolutely red and tingly. 𝗧𝗪, yes, I have never wanted any woman more than you. 𝗧𝗪 smiled. Glad to hear it, because ever since I first saw you, you stirred up desire in me, too. Really, really. Without saying another word, Todoroki leaned in to kiss 𝗧𝗪, and she permitted him to do so. At this moment, nothing else mattered to him but being with her. Well, almost. Hey Two-Face, we had a report of shots fired over here, said a black female NYPD officer. Everything okay? Todoroki broke away from the kiss. I had to deal with some deranged cultists, but everything's okay now, 𝐒𝐵𝗃𝗏. Gotcha. After returning to the apartment complex, Todoroki grabbed his usual stuff before returning to 𝗧𝗪's apartment, taking a shower and snuggling with her. 𝗧𝗪, this has been the happiest day of my life. I don't know how I can possibly repay you. Hey, just be yourself. The fact that you warmed up to me so well is payment enough. I will be honest, though, a few days ago, I told Bennett that I had no use for romance. Having spent some time with you, however, I feel like I want more. 𝗧𝗪 giggled. Good night, Todoroki. Good night. 𝗧𝗪 shut off her bedside lamp, and once again, they went off to dreamland. However, Todoroki found himself wishing he hadn't gone to dreamland, for he found himself dreaming about that night when Hamasaki was trying to bite him. However, after she promised to end him as quickly as possible, something unexpected happened. Leaning in closer to him, she changed into 𝗧𝗪. No, Todoroki bolted awake from the dream, panting and sweating. He did his best to calm himself down, and then switched his focus to 𝗧𝗪, who was still in his arms, sleeping peacefully. He tightened his grip on her as he cried. Good morning again, Todoroki. Todoroki pendiculated again as he awoke to see 𝗧𝗪's smiling face, knowing that she was still trustworthy. He wrapped his arms around her and kissed her. Wow, you're really happy to see me today, said 𝗧𝗪. Any reason in particular? Todoroki smiled. Why shouldn't I be happy? I get to wake up next to the most beautiful woman I've ever met. 𝗧𝗪 giggled. Stop it. Stop what? I mean, I know you think I'm the most beautiful woman ever, but you don't have to butter me up that much. Todoroki raised an eyebrow. Why would I use butter on you? You're not bread. 𝗧𝗪 laughed. What? Said Todoroki. I'm sorry, I didn't expect you to say that. And why is that so funny? No, it's just that ... you're so cute when you're naive. Todoroki said nothing else. As long as 𝗧𝗪 thought he was cute, who was he to argue with her? At breakfast, all seemed normal except for one thing. You're awfully quiet, Todoroki. Is everything okay? I'm just not feeling very talkative right now. Then again, I rarely feel talkative unless I have my morning dose of caffeine. 𝗧𝗪 nodded. I understand. I won't bother you too much if you don't feel like it. Thank you. Todoroki took a bite of a waffle that 𝗧𝗪 had made for him. Actually, there is something else I wanted to tell you. What? I know I can seem like a complete asshole, but really, all I ever wanted was someone to love me, someone to be by my side even when the whole world is against me, to let me know what a good person I am and ... Oh God. Todoroki began crying again, and 𝗧𝗪 got up from her seat and hugged him. Todoroki, listen to me, you are loved. I realize things hurt sometimes, but you are a good person. Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise, okay? I won't. 𝗧𝗪 smiled. I hope you won't, because otherwise, I'm going to kiss you until you smile. Todoroki tried his best to smile through the tears. Then kiss me, you lovely young lady. 𝗧𝗪 grabbed a paper towel so Todoroki could wipe away his tears and blow his nose. Once she did so, she kissed him, which again caused the heat and redness to rush to his face. In that moment, he realized that all those Folgers commercials were lying to him. This woman was the best part of waking up. After doing his strength training exercises, Todoroki got a call. Hello. Two-Face, it's Sergeant Herrero. Good morning, Sergeant. What's on your mind? Deputy Inspector Malcolm wants to see you. I'll be right over. Goodbye. Todoroki hung up and got dressed for the day. Who was that? Asked 𝗃𝗀. Todoroki put on his holsters. One of my NYPD coworkers. I have important business over there. But I thought you were on vacation. Todoroki put on his jacket and grabbed his stuff. Sometimes, business trumps pleasure. But I'll see you soon, right? Todoroki nodded. You will. As a matter of fact, you're cordially invited to my apartment if you so desire. 𝗃𝗀 smiled. Nice. I can't wait to see it. Then it's decided. See you later, 𝗃𝗀. 𝗃𝗀 waved at Todoroki. See you later, Todoroki. After dropping his stuff off at his apartment, Todoroki headed on to the Midtown North house, where Malcolm was less than impressed with him. Todoroki, 𝗃𝗏𝗄𝗏, you're supposed to be on vacation. Why the fuck are you shooting up the goddamn city? Sir, had I not intervened in stopping those zombies or the cultists, then people could have been killed. Besides, these monsters never take vacations. I don't care if they don't. When you apply for vacation, that means you don't go around blasting people with a goddamn oversized hand cannon. And don't try to talk your fucking way out of this one, you two-haired son of a bitch. When you get your ass out of this office, I don't even want to hear you thinking about SHOOTI and no one. Are we clear on this? With all due respect, sir, how could you hear me thinking? Thoughts don't produce sound. Malcolm thrust his finger towards the door. Just get the fuck out of here and don't shoot no one. IAINPAYIN to be a dumbass, too. No, you're paying me to be a police detective. Enough. Not one more wisecrack. You hear me? Todoroki nodded. Yes, sir. Todoroki and Malcolm saluted each other, and the former left the office. Once he was sure that Todoroki was out of sight, Malcolm grabbed a stress ball and squeezed it, slowly at first, but then he squeezed it rapidly before slamming it on the ground. How the fuck did that guy ever get hired into the NYPD? Said Malcolm to himself. Todoroki returned to his apartment and crashed on the couch. As much as he enjoyed working for the NYPD, and as much as he enjoyed being the only member of an elite detective unit, he could never wrap his head around why Malcolm was so interested in being so hard on him. Sure, Todoroki's methods were unconventional, even brutal, but he was following regulations as best as he could, or at least he thought he was. He figured that Malcolm was jealous because he was so exceptionally good at his job and had saved the lives of many people in New York. That, or Malcolm was jealous because Todoroki just so happened to be the son of the top pro hero and ex-mayor of NYC. On the other hand, Todoroki couldn't figure why Malcolm would be jealous if he admitted to him that it was nice to have such a connection. Eventually, Todoroki got tired of trying to puzzle out how Malcolm's mind worked and put on another episode of Miami Action. About a quarter of the way through the episode, he heard knocking on his door, so he paused the show and went to see who was there. It was 𝗃𝗀, so he opened the door. Todoroki. 𝗃𝗀 gave Todoroki a big hug, which he gladly returned. Unexpectedly, however, she backed away shortly thereafter and frowned. Is something wrong, 𝗃𝗀? Oh, it's just ... You seem very tense. I'm not gonna lie, I got chewed out by my boss for stopping that demon attack last night, not to mention the zombie outbreak. I mean ... Your muscles ... They seem pretty tight. So, well, I don't want you to hurt yourself when you're exercising. Then 𝗃𝗀 smiled. Fortunately, I know just how to take care of that. Todoroki gently scratched his cheek. How? Just let me in and I'll explain. Todoroki nodded and stepped aside to let 𝗃𝗀 in. She took her boots off and gasped lightly when she saw his apartment. Wow, this is a nice place, said 𝗃𝗀. You really think so? Absolutely. Now come, follow me to the couch. As you wish. Todoroki and 𝗃𝗀 headed for the former's couch. So, what did you have in mind? Asked Todoroki. Since you're so tense, I thought I'd give you a massage. Todoroki blushed at the mention of the word massage. Are you sure this is necessary? 𝗃𝗀 smiled. Hey, if you're not comfortable with it, you don't have to. I just wanted to help you relax. Todoroki looked at 𝗃𝗀's smiling face. Considering what she just said, the idea did sound tempting, and he figured it would help him get Malcolm off his mind, so the answer was obvious. Okay, I'll let you massage me. Great. Just take off your clothes and lie down face first on the couch. As flustered as he was initially by 𝗃𝗀 offering him a massage, Todoroki had no problem stripping naked in front of her. She unzipped her hoodie just enough to expose her cleavage, and then she pulled out a bottle of coconut-scented massage oil. She then rubbed some oil between her hands, and once Todoroki was lying down, 𝗃𝗀 began massaging his back and shoulders. Todoroki let out a soft "oh" as soon as 𝗃𝗀 touched him. He noted that she was giving him a nice, firm rub-down, and yet her hands felt exquisitely smooth and creamy, as if he were being caressed by the gentle waves of the ocean. With every rubbing motion, Todoroki felt as though 𝗃𝗀 was telling his body that the environment it was in was safe and nurturing. He could sense no fear, no worry, nothing that would trouble him. He could even feel the tension that 𝗃𝗀 was talking about melting away just as a lit candle would. Best of all, it just felt so right and wholesome to him. Is everything good so far? Asked 𝗧𝗪𝗏. Everything is very good. 𝗧𝗪𝗏 smiled as she continued to massage Todoroki. What she especially liked about doing this, aside from the fact that she got to lay her hands on someone she was in love with, was that she was making a difference not only in his physical health, but his mental and emotional health as well. As much satisfaction as she got in saving his life from Hamasaki. For her, saving the world with a smile on her face didn't always mean defeating bad guys. Often, it also meant making good people feel really good. And she felt really good herself knowing that she was helping him to feel relaxed. By now, Todoroki's mind had shut itself off to anything going on that didn't involve 𝗧𝗪𝗏 massaging him. Everything just felt wonderful for him right now. Then, 𝗧𝗪𝗏's hands moved lower and lower, gently gliding over his butt and down his thighs. And that was where things got weird for Todoroki. Her hands had gone inside his thighs, accidentally brushing against his scrotum in the process. Because of this, he got hard. He tried willing it to go down, but when she massaged his feet, he knew that it was no use. Her hands just felt super nice on his weary feet, sending quite an electric charge up his spine. Given this, he wondered if she was a woman or a goddess. While he loved how the soreness left his feet, he wondered how much longer he could go on with a raging erection. However, he didn't have to wonder how much longer when 𝗧𝗪𝗏 stopped massaging his feet. Hey, Todoroki, I was wondering. Yes, how would you like a happy ending? But we're not watching a movie. Deku chuckled. No, silly. I mean, Deku raised her index finger, wrapped her other hand around it and stroked it up and down. Almost immediately, Todoroki knew what she meant, and knowing what she wanted to do to him, it further stiffened his erection. However, he did love her, and he had fantasies about her, and knowing that she was consensually offering him a chance to fulfill one of those fantasies, the answer was obvious. All right, I accept. Todoroki turned over on his back, thus revealing his stiff 8 inches to her. She gasped when she saw just how big and ready he was. Is everything okay, 𝗧𝗪𝗏? Oh ... Why yes, I just didn't. 𝗧𝗪𝗏 tried to compose herself and put on her best smile. Why don't I take care of this? 𝗧𝗪𝗏 squirted some oil onto Todoroki's rod, and shortly thereafter, she began jacking him off. To say that Todoroki enjoyed the sensation would have been the understatement of the century. He had already come to enjoy feeling 𝗧𝗪𝗏's hands massaging him, but to feel one of them down there, especially considering it was going up and over his glands and all the way down to the base quite rapidly. He was just enjoying himself too much, though he wondered how long he was going to last with her skills. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Said 𝗧𝗪𝗏. You just wanted me to get you off like this, right? Todoroki nodded weakly. Right, that's okay. A guy as handsome as you deserves it. 𝗧𝗪𝗏 smiled as she continued to pleasure Todoroki. Aside from the fact that she was sexually pleasing someone she really cared about, she also enjoyed the fact that she got to practice what she'd learned on a real live man. While 𝗧𝗪𝗏 wasn't a woman who thought about sex constantly, she did have her own naughty little fantasy. And it just made her tingly knowing that she didn't have to fantasize at this moment. She increased the speed of her strokes somewhat, intently determined to give Todoroki an orgasm. She would get her wish soon enough as 𝗬𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗏 gonna come. 𝗧𝗪𝗏 giggled as she brought Todoroki to his climax. While his recent wet dream meant that he didn't squirt buckets of cum, he still gave off an appreciable amount as the pleasure took him over. She didn't even stop jacking him off during his orgasm, which he really loved. When Todoroki got down from his high, 𝗧𝗪𝗏 slowed down the speed at which she stroked before finally coming to a stop. She held onto his shaft for just a moment more before letting go. Was that good for you? Asked 𝗧𝗪𝗏. Todoroki did his best to control his breathing. 𝗧𝗪𝗏, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. Todoroki sat upright and placed his hands on 𝗧𝗪𝗏's cheeks as he kissed her. He'd enjoyed kissing her before, but considering that he felt so much less tense after his orgasm, it felt that much more sensual. Soon enough, they broke away. You're welcome, Todoroki. Todoroki smiled. Izuku Midoriya. I'll do anything for you. 𝗧𝗪𝗏 giggled. Well, in that case, why don't you and I go to Studio 54 tonight? Todoroki frowned. As much as I love you, I hate disco music. 𝗧𝗪𝗏 maintained her smile. Come on, it'll be fun. Besides, you did say you'd do anything for me, right? Todoroki stared at 𝗧𝗪𝗏 briefly. As much as he hated disco, he really loved her, and who was he to disappoint the sexiest woman he'd ever met? On second thought ... You win, said Todoroki. Awesome.